Hello. Now, a few promotional statements about my channel here before I begin. My channel mostly deals with the issue of gay rights and marriage equality. Now, in my activism towards that, I want to say this, though, that I am a constitutionalist first and a gay rights activist second. I think there are a lot of things coming from many people within the gay rights community where they are impugning the rights of others, specifically the right of, for example, a Christian to say, I believe sex is a sin, or that homosexuality is a sin. Our neighbors have the same civil rights that we are fighting for. Okay, and so I hope you'll take a look at my videos here. Tell me what you think. But in doing this, I can't leave the conspiracy theorists alone. Okay, now I'm not a conspiracy theorist by any stretch of the imagination, but I do acknowledge conspiracies do happen. Conspiracies probably are happening, and conspiracies have happened. But to go from the jump that conspiracies exist to everything is a conspiracy and hold on to your ideas that these certain incidents were conspiracies when all evidence refutes, all reputable, logical, rational evidence refutes your claim, you have taken a jump into insanity. Okay? Insanity is when your belief system interrupts your social life, your ability to socialize, and your ability to be objective and properly perceive what's going on around you. So you fit. Okay? To go from, there is, on the flip side of the coin, to go from, you know what, all these conspiracies people out here are nuts, so therefore there is no such thing as a conspiracy, that's equally nuts. Okay? Now, the one that I'm picking on today is the idea that Michelle Obama is a man. Yep, that one is actually out there, claiming that Michelle Obama is a man, so therefore President Obama needs to be impeached because he's deceiving the American public and blah 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 blah. Their evidence is photographic images. That's it. That's basically it. Oh, and one time it was caught on film where, in a period of deep thought, by a slip of the tongue, President Obama referred to his wife as Michael. Well, so what? You've never done that? You have never accidentally called somebody by the wrong name during a period of stress or concentration? Really? Okay. Anyway, photographs. There's a few things they like to pick on. And one of the things they like to pick on with Michelle Obama is that in some of her images it appears that her ring finger is longer than her index finger. Okay? And I say appears because we're going to get back to that here in a minute, but let's assume for sake of argument that Michelle Obama's ring finger is longer than her index finger. Now, this is a side I picked up here, 6 things your fingers say about you. Now, I'm not necessarily agreeing with your hands being able to tell you who you are as a human being. Okay, that is part of something called physiognomy, which is the study of human physical characteristics and then applying personality traits to an individual, much like graphology and handwriting analysis is supposed to do. I'm not saying I believe that. I'm just using this site here because it does show observations of the physiology of the hand. Okay? Now, one of the things your fingers are supposed to tell you is that the most obvious thing the length of your fingers tells you is your sex. Men's ring fingers are normally longer than their index fingers, while women's ring and index fingers tend to be the same length. Let me point out a couple key words. Normally and tend. These are not absolutes. Okay? These are not absolutes. But as a general rule, we can agree that probably the statement is probably true that most men's fingers are ring fingers are usually longer than their index fingers, and that women's ring and index fingers tend to be the same length. And in some of the images of Michelle Obama, it doesn't appear. It appears that her ring finger is longer than her index finger. So, let's continue. A study in California found that gay women tend to have shorter index fingers than their ring fingers. What? Shorter index fingers than their ring fingers. Now, I'm not saying that statement is true, that if your ring finger is longer than your index finger and you're a female, you are a lesbian. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is that it has been observed that there are women out there who have longer ring fingers than index fingers. Alright? Here is another one. Number 4. Men and women whose ring fingers are longer than their index fingers are more likely to have an aptitude for sports. Well, again, we have an observation that both men and women can have longer ring fingers than their index fingers, and guess what? That does not change their gender. Okay? Now, one of the things they like to do is when they find an image of Michelle Obama's hands, and it does appear that her ring finger is approximately the same length of her index finger, they want to shout, "This image has been photoshopped." Well, let me tell you something about Photoshop. Photography, light, physics, and I'm having trouble concentrating because I can only make 10-minute films and I have 3 minutes left. So, I don't want to make such a simple presentation two-parter, so I'm going to rush. Don't tell me something is edited by Photoshop. Prove it. There are tools that you can use to prove it. This one is imageedited.com. Go ahead and put that image in there and see what comes out. Don't just tell me that something is edited by Photoshop, because most people who want to say things like this know absolutely nothing about light. They know nothing about photography. They know nothing about perspective. Okay? They are not qualified to make these statements. I was using cameras back when it was 35 millimeter, where you focused, you set the aperture, you set the shutter speed, and most people don't even know what those things are and how that applies to the finished product of a photograph. Okay? So don't tell me something is Photoshopped, because I don't believe you know what you're talking about. If you're just going to say it, I'm not going to believe that you know what you're talking about. Prove it. If you can't prove it, shut up. Okay? Next, they want to talk about the Adam's apple. Michelle Obama has an Adam's apple. Well, you know what? Everyone has an Adam's apple, because your Adam's apple is nothing more than your voice box, and in some cases, it is going to be more pronounced than in others. So if Michelle Obama is a man because she has a visible Adam's apple, then Hillary Clinton is also a man. Alright? Doesn't wash. Images for broad shoulders. That's another thing they like to pick on, is the width of her shoulders. There are plenty of women in this world who have broad, pronounced shoulders. That doesn't wash. Don't tell me that she's a man because she has broad shoulders, when I can pull up an internet search and in less than 0.15 seconds pull up thousands of images of women with broad shoulders. Doesn't wash. Get some real evidence. Broad backs, well, that's another thing they like to say, and you know, I have a surprise for you. If someone has broad shoulders, they have a broad back, because believe it or not, they're connected. So, conclusion. You don't know what you're talking about. Stop making a fool of yourself and come up with evidence, or get on and get a real life.